Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. My neighbor Karen has always been a bit off her rocker. Ever since she moved in next door a year ago, she's been nothing but a nuisance. Complaining about my kids playing in the backyard, calling the city over my unkempt lawn, you name it. But I never thought she'd go as far as literally kidnapping my 5-year-old son. It started as a typical Saturday morning. My husband was off on a business trip and I was home alone with the kids. After making pancakes for breakfast, I told my son Timmy he could go play in the backyard for a bit before his soccer game later that day. Our backyard has a full 6 feet privacy fence, so I knew he'd be safe while I cleaned up the kitchen. About 15 minutes later, I went to check on him only to find the backyard empty. My heart dropped. I frantically searched around the house and yard, calling his name. That's when I noticed the side gate was wide open. Someone must have come in and taken him. I quickly dialed cop, trying to remain calm as I explained the situation. The operator assured me officers were on their way. As I waited, panic rising inside me, I happened to look out the front window. That's when I saw it. My neighbor Karen walking down the sidewalk, holding my son's hand. I raced outside and ran up to them, demanding to know what was going on. "Let go of my son," I shouted. Karen looked at me coolly. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said. "Timmy is my child." I was floored. Was this woman actually trying to claim my son as her own? "That is my son," I insisted. "Let him go right now or I'll scream for help." "Go ahead," Karen shrugged. "Everyone will see you harassing us during our walk." I looked down at Timmy. He seemed confused, but not necessarily scared. Karen must have lured him out of the backyard somehow. I tried to grab his arm, but Karen yanked him away. Just then, the cop cars pulled up, having responded to my cop call. I quickly told them what happened. "This is insane," I cried. "She broke into my yard and kidnapped my son. Then she tries telling me he's actually her kid." The officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, is this your child?" "Of course," Karen insisted smugly. "I've been raising Timmy since he was born. This delusional woman is trying to claim him as her own." Luckily, I had all the proof on my side. I showed the officers baby photos of Timmy, his birth certificate, medical records, everything. Meanwhile, Karen had nothing to demonstrate her claims. The officer told Karen she needed to let Timmy go and come to the station for questioning. She refused, clinging to him desperately and screaming. It took both cops forcibly removing her grip on him before I could finally take my son back in my arms. He was really frightened now and crying for me. At the station, the police got the full story out of Karen. Turns out she'd been planning this for weeks, ever since overhearing me talk about my husband being away on business. She'd been waiting for the perfect opportunity to abduct Timmy as payback for our previous complaints against her to the city. She fully intended to try keeping him permanently, since her adult kids wanted nothing to do with her. In the end, Karen was arrested and charged with felony kidnapping. I also filed a restraining order against her on behalf of myself and Timmy. Now she can't come within 500 feet of either of us. The experience was absolutely harrowing. I'm just grateful I acted quickly and got my son back unharmed, physically at least. Emotionally, it's been harder for him. He wakes up scared that Karen's coming to take him away again. We've gotten him into therapy, though, and I reassure him every night that he's safe. As for Karen, she pled guilty and is now serving 5 years minimum in prison. The judge said she exhibited extreme delusion and entitlement, refusing to recognize the severity of her crime. She even had the gall to claim during sentencing that we'd regret this. I had to laugh. If anyone's regretting something, it's her. The whole awful ordeal just reinforces why I'll never understand people like Karen. What drives someone to inflict that kind of trauma on a child? All because they can't handle being wrong. I suppose some people are just deranged. In any case, I'm taking every precaution to protect my family until that woman is locked up for good. The second she's released, I'm filing another restraining order. No way will I give that psychopath the chance to torment us again. For now, I'm just thankful to still have my son, safe in the backyard where he belongs. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Back when I was in college, one of my classes was a chemistry lab. The lab was separate from the theory and such, and was all about learning proper procedures for performing experiments correctly and writing up reports. The woman who ran the class was neither a professor nor a grad student TA. She was just some woman who had been hired to teach the labs because no one else wanted to. She probably had a degree in education or something, maybe a BS in chemistry, but she'd had the job for years. She also sucked at her job. She was that combination of lazy and stupid that is infuriating at the best of times, and worse when in a position of authority. She would dock us points if the results of our experiments were off the expected result, and since the equipment was in less than stellar condition, that happened often. She would never let us retry experiments if we had some equipment failure either, like the time my ceramic crucible straight up cracked in half because it had been damaged or was defective. I got a D on that experiment, but then she made her last mistake. At the end of the semester, all final exams were scheduled by the university to make sure that no one got double booked for their exams. One day, I got back from an exam and was sitting there playing a video game when one of my housemates passed by. Her, "Why weren't you at the chem lab final?" Me, because it's tomorrow?" Her, "No, she changed it." Me, "When?" Her, "She told us in the last class." Me, "The one I missed because I was getting surgery?" Her, "Oh yeah." Now, labs were only worth 1 credit hour, so even a D in that class wouldn't have hurt my overall GPA enough to affect my scholarships. But the lab teacher had decided that if you missed the final, you automatically failed the class. I frantically went through my university email account looking to see if I'd missed one telling me that the final had been changed. There wasn't one, so this woman was going to fail me, essentially, for missing 1 class to get surgery. Duck. That. On the day the final was supposed to be scheduled, I showed up right on time. Unsurprisingly, the room was locked. 2 other students showed up as well and flipped out when I told them that my housemate had said she'd moved the final. I told them not to worry and just come with me. The 3 of us walked down the hall to the office of the head of the chemistry department. When he let us in, I told him our teacher hadn't shown up for the final, and the scheduled time was half over already. The professor looked confused and checked the schedule. "Prof, you're right, it is supposed to be right now. I'll call her." After a bit, me and my 2 classmates got to hear one side of the ensuing conversation. "Prof, you're supposed to have a final right now in your lab. Where are you? No, it's scheduled right now. No, you can't change it. It's scheduled to prevent conflicts. Well, I have 3 students here who didn't get the word. I'll check." Prof asked us if we got an email about the final being changed. All 3 of us said no. I added that my housemate had told me she'd announced it in the last class, which I had missed. The others had the same problem. Up to this point, the professor seemed to have thought it was just some misunderstanding, but now things clicked into place. He got back on the phone. "Where are you? You need to come down to my office now." "You're where?" "I see. We'll discuss this later." He hung up looking annoyed. "Sorry about that," he said, trying to put on a good face. "We can't reschedule your final at this point, so how would you feel about just taking the grade you had prior?" Now was my time to strike. I pulled out the copies of every lab where the teacher had docked me points for things that weren't my fault. "Well, about that." Within a few minutes, the head of the chem department was fuming. You see, part of the proper procedure for lab reports is including information on anything that might have affected the data, including equipment failures. I had done so on every lab thoroughly, and in many cases the teacher had docked me points for it as unnecessary information. The professor asked the others if this was normal, and they said it was. He thanked us for letting him know, and said he'd get back to us about our grades. I got an email a few days later letting me know that while he couldn't change my grades, the professor would let me keep the C I'd had before missing the final for now, but if I did better in the next semester's chem lab, he would retroactively change the C to match. The next semester, there were several grad students running the chem labs, instead of just one woman, and the teacher was gone. The lab equipment had all been replaced with brand new stuff too. It turned out that the lab teacher had moved the final a day earlier so she could leave for vacation sooner, and while she had moved it to a time when no other finals were scheduled, she wasn't allowed to do that without running it by the chem department head first. Combined with her failure to properly notify the class, and probably fueled by her incorrect scoring method, that had been enough reason to let her go. The next one is a petty revenge story. When I was a teenager, for about 8 months, I worked in customer service at a shopping center. One of the aspects of my job was issuing refunds when vending machines didn't work properly. Basically, customers would put money in the machine, and it wouldn't dispense the product they paid for. We had numerous vending machines, and as you know, those things don't always function correctly. All our machines were numbered, and the policy was to ask for the machine number and then process the refund accordingly. Considering that most refunds were for 50 cents to $1, management told us, just side with the customer, it's not worth the hassle. One day, a woman, whom I'll call Karen, not her real name, approached me and claimed that the Coke machine took her money but didn't give her the Coke she paid for. I asked her how much money the machine took, and she told me 50 cents. I then inquired about the machine number. Now at this point, I fully expected her not to know the number. In fact, customers rarely knew it. In such cases, we would usually ask them where the machine was located, and we'd fill in the rest ourselves. We wanted to identify the problematic machine, so we could send someone to fix it. Instead of saying, "I don't know," she freaked out and started yelling. She accused me of being sexist and racist. I'm white, and she was Hispanic. She also accused me of calling her a liar, and said I was a piece of crap for not listening to her. She made a huge scene, claiming I was just an angry man stuck in a dead-end job. In reality, as a customer service rep, I was making $12 an hour, which back in 2007 was one of the highest paid non-management jobs in the store, and I was still in high school. So I calmly waited for her to finish her rant, and I said, "Miss, I'm sorry, but for every refund I process for a vending machine, I need the machine number. You'll need to go back to the machine and get me the number. It'll be on the front in the upper right-hand corner. You can't miss it." She protested. "I'm tired, and it's on the other side of the store. Can't you just give me 50 cents? I replied, "Sorry, miss, my hands are tied." She then called me an a-hole and stormed off. 10 minutes later, she returned, and the machine number was written on her hand. I smiled, pulled out the paper, and took my sweet time filling in the report. Usually I would wait until after the customer left, but I really wanted to add in the extra minute it would take to fill in the paperwork before I gave her the 50 cents. After everything was said and done, I asked her to read my report and sign where it says customer signature, which, by the way, we never did, but she was special. She took a second to read the report, signed it, and I gave her the 50-cent refund, wishing her well. I then proudly walked into the back office where my supervisor was and handed him the report. He laughed his ass off and said, "That was the lady that was screaming, wasn't it?" I replied, "Yes," and he asked, "And you made her walk to the machine, didn't you?" I said, "Yes." He continued, "And then you made her sign the refund slip?" And again I said, "Yes." He concluded, "Good man." The next one is a malicious compliance story. I was a technician working in a lab. My job was to repair car parts for this third-party repair company. The company made such monumentally stupid decisions in a very short span that over 50% of the call center all quit within 3 days of each other. So the company started dragging employees from other departments kicking and screaming into the call center. Every day, I'd walk in and ask the building manager, "What's up today? Am I doing my job or am I answering phones?" And he'd sigh and say, "Answering phones." Well, I quickly learned what made a lot of the call center quit. You see, at this company, we had a really good warranty policy. Lifetime warranty on the part, regardless of who owns it at any given time. If it has our sticker on it and the sticker hasn't been defaced, we will service it for free. If you aren't happy with the quality, you can ask for a refund if you were the original person who sent it in for work in the first place. Well, it turned out we were losing money because when stuff would come in for warranty repair, some of the salespeople would grab it, rip our sticker off, throw it in the junk pile, and call the customer saying we couldn't fix it, but we have a perfectly good one here that they can sell at a discount. They did this so much that customers started just asking for refunds instead. We got so many refund requests that the building manager told the call center that we would not be honoring the warranty anymore, but not to tell the customers that. Lead them on. When they ask for a refund, tell them it's being processed and will take up to 6 weeks. 6 weeks from now, when they call asking where their refund was, tell them it was in the wrong stack of paperwork, or there was an error at the bank, whatever excuse you can think of, and tell them it'll be another 6 weeks. Keep doing this until they stop calling. Well, the call center revolted. More than half quit. When I found out this is what happened, I told them they don't want me on the phones because I will not lie to customers. The building manager said tough crap. Until they can hire more people for phones, I'm stuck there. So when someone called, pissed off that they haven't received their refund, I profusely apologized, let them know I'm sure there is a good explanation, let me get you a manager, and I cold transferred them to the building manager. He'd come back to his desk, find like 30 people on hold in his queue. He got pissed, told me to stop cold transferring people. So, I stopped cold transferring people. Every 3 or 4 minutes, I'd let a new customer know I can get them the manager. I'd transfer them, get up, walk over to the manager's office and tell the manager, "Hey, so-and-so from X company is on your line, pissed off that you're refusing to give them a refund. Have fun." Eventually, I got pulled into a meeting with him and the CFO and was told in no uncertain terms that if I continued to do so, I would be fired. I reminded them that the only reason this is happening in the first place is that A, they came up with this crappy plan in the first place. B, they're making me answer phones instead of doing my job. And C, they can't keep anyone because whenever they hired someone new, the rest of us would fill them in on what's happening, and they would subsequently quit after their first day. In the end, I found a better job and quit that hellhole, and on my last day, filed a complaint with OSHA, filling them in on all the illegal, dangerous crap they'd make us do in the lab. The next one is an entitled people story. This is so unreal to me that a person has this much audacity, but apparently my sister does. I, a 28-year-old woman, met my soon-to-be wife, Noah, who is 35, when she moved to my country for work. She was freshly divorced, but has a little girl who is 5 called Lena. Lena is the sweetest, and it's been wonderful getting to know her. Noah divorced her husband after realizing she was gay, and he ran for the hills, stating he didn't want anything to do with her or Lena in case she passes it on. Whatever the heck that means. I proposed to Noah 10 months ago because I knew she'd be too nervous to do it herself. It wasn't extravagant. I just asked her over dinner with Lena's blessing. We've agreed we want a simple and intimate wedding. Her first wedding was big and she hated it. So, just family and close friends. My parents have offered to give us some money to help, even though we've reassured them it won't be a big affair. But they wanted Lena to get a pretty flower girl dress and wanted to pay for my dress and whatever Noah will wear, probably a suit. Enter my entitled younger sister Kate, who is 25 and acts like she and her boyfriend are engaged, but he's too scared to actually ask her. She's the golden child, spoiled, and gets whatever she wishes. She's made some remarks about Noah already having a child and being a divorcee, but I told her to lose the ignorance. Just because she decided to stay in our small hometown and not expand her personality doesn't mean she can say stuff like that. Over dinner last night, she started whining about how I didn't need any money, and she didn't know why we were bothering with a wedding when Noah has done it all before. But now she has suddenly decided she's gay and wants to have another go at marriage with a woman. This is something Noah is insecure about, so I get protective of her. Kate went on to say that she could reuse her first wedding dress and started cackling. Her boyfriend looked embarrassed, and my parents told her to be quieter, but no one said anything else. My parents have come to me and said it makes sense to them to give more money to my sister's wedding fund, as it will be her first and only wedding, not even engaged yet. They totally ignored the fact that I've never been married. I told them to keep all of their money, as it wasn't welcome if they were going to shame my wife and stepdaughter. We are perfectly able to fund it on our own. The next one is an entitled parent story. My friend Kylan and I work in a woodworking company. It's a pretty great job for me, as I love hands-on activity and creating things. Kylan, however, has more of a difficult time with it all, which is completely fine as I help him with it. His mom and my mom aren't necessarily close, but both support me and him in our work. We're pretty young, so it helps with reassurance. But a few days before this incident, I started to realize that Kylan's mom never really acknowledged my work. Now that's not really a big deal to me as I don't require praise, but I do find it a bit weird as Kai's mom has apparently had a few racial incidents at her own work, and I'm African. I was just assuming it's because she's afraid. I'm a pretty built guy and 6'6". Fast forward to Tuesday and I'm working on a wooden chair that has taken me a few more attempts than wanted. The table saw I had been using to make clean cuts was pretty rusty from Kai using it constantly. I headed out to the department to get a replacement, and was a bit annoyed with Kai not doing it himself. I came back and said, "Hey man, don't be afraid to change your equipment." And he rolled his eyes and just replied with a K, which just annoyed me even more. I just pushed past it and continued. But minutes later I heard Kai laughing, and I looked up to find him laughing at my cutting. This made me extremely upset as I've been working almost day and night while he only works 9 hours. This, along with his mom recently coming into the shop and laughing along with him. This got to me, and I walked over to Kai and told him a few words that I shouldn't have. He immediately got defensive and pushed me back, and I was about to strike back when his mom instantly joined in with him and intentionally pushed me to the left where the saw was. Stupidly, I left it on. As soon as I was pushed back, the back of my hand was shoved right into the saw, causing a drizzle of blood to gush everywhere, and for my palm to be basically split in half with a huge gap between my pinky and ring finger. The shock kicked in, and I instantly grabbed my hand and shouted for my mom, who was on the other side of the shop. She immediately got an ambulance, and I was sent to the closest hospital. Kai has been texting me almost every day apologizing for his mother. The only text from her was her saying that This was my fault, and to not hurt her son. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.